Welcome to video update number 2 of our Core Sound 20 Mark III build. This video I'm going to show you what I've done since the last video I shot. In that video I had just fitted up these bunk top cleats, and now on the starboard side here all those cleats are glued in and the compartments are coated mostly. The port side is what we're working on this weekend. I've already got some of the cleats glued in, and we're hoping to get the bunks glued down tomorrow. And so here's the bunk tops. We just got a coat of epoxy on them, and we'll get another coat on tomorrow before we glue them down. And you see this piece of glass here. This is reinforcing the joint between the bunk top from the kit and this little extension which I cut and made because as you recall, we decided to raise the level of our bunks by about 1 7/8 inches, and that was mainly just to gain a little bit of storage space under the bunks. And so we give up a little bit of headroom, but we decided that we had plenty of headroom. And so I'll show you that on the other side in a second, but basically the cutout in bulkhead 4 over there, we just maximized what we could get the bunks. You can see that cleat there. We just raised that as high as we could so the bunk will be flush with that cutout. Also, since the last video, I got my ballast tank glass. I posted some pictures of that in our build thread. The strip down the middle is from a piece of peel ply which I tried as a experiment, and then I didn't do any more of it because I could get such a glossy finish that I just decided not to do any of that. So it's just 10-ounce glass with a fill coat to fill the weave afterward. Also, something I'll note is in these bunk tops, I was able to get a nice glossy coat on the plywood with just a single coat on the horizontal surfaces. I did have to come in and put another coat on the vertical surfaces, but the horizontal surfaces were fine after a single heavy coat, just heavy enough that it wouldn't, or light enough that it wouldn't run, but heavy enough that I got this nice glossy shell. So I'm not planning to put any more epoxy there. The cleats, however, I did put a second coat on. So I got 2 heavy coats, and that's sort of what I've been doing mostly with all of these. Okay, I'll also show you my anchor well, which I posted on the forum, but I think it got lost. I've made a cutout in the back where my outboard sticks through, and this is a temporary outboard clamp board just to get the positioning right. And thinking about it, I think I'm going to go away from this design, or that is, I'm going to change it because I'm worried that without any cutout through the transom, I'm just going to have exhaust gases coming up out of the well. And we're still trying to decide whether we might actually want to go with an electric, like a torpedo motor, but we haven't made that decision yet. And so what I'm thinking of doing is actually filling part of this back in and then angling the well out that way, so when you lift the outboard, the prop would come up out here, which would be clear of the rudder, but it would let me do a cutout right here next to the rudder post or the vertical transom stiffener. And then my clamp board would just be on an angle. And I don't think that would affect the motor, in use. It just means when it kicks up, it kicks up at an angle. So that's something I'm still thinking about. And also, since the last video, we got the transom mostly glassed in. The port and starboard sides are glassed to the bottom as well as the sides, and the longitudinal bulkheads there, the cockpit sides here. And so here's one bay that I've done just today. I glued the cleats on, and then I coated the inside of the bay, and then I'll come back in here and I'll get a second coat on the verticals surfaces as well as the cleat. or excuse me, the bottom stringer. And then here's my centerboard trunk. I drilled the hole today, and I'm getting ready to glue in my stiffener. Here's my vertical centerboard stiffener. It's gonna go right in here, and I tapered the top of it just to make it a little more, take a little bit of weight out of it and streamline it a little bit. And so I bored a hole out here, and I filled that with epoxy this morning. This is a piece of deck board, pressure treated deck board that's been drying in the garage for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's got a little checking there, but I wasn't too worried about that. I'm just trying to use up material that I have, and as long as it's dry, this is perfectly good. It's gonna get painted anyway. You can see here at the bottom, I've rabbited it, a shallow rabbit, because there's a piece of fiberglass tape down there, and I don't want this to, you know, to be an extra gap that I don't need. So after this is glued on, I will stick a little dowel through the hole from the other side and clear out any thickened epoxy that squirts through my hole that's drilled. And then later I'll come in and I'll drill partially into this bushing, and that will be where the pin stops. Because we raised our bunk tops, it raised it above the pinhole. I think in the plans it shows the pin being inserted from the port side, but I'm actually going to insert my pin from the starboard side, which doesn't matter. It just because of our bunk tops being where they are, that's what I'm gonna do. The pin goes in from one side, and it's a blind hole, so the pin there'll be a blind hole drilled into this bushing part the way through, maybe about halfway through, and that just gives extra bearing for the centerboard pin. And I'll show you, I opted to drill my trunk, there's Zoe, I opted to drill my trunk out in place as opposed to like on a drill press, and it's really easy. I just took this scrap wood, it's about 1.5 inches thick, and I drilled it on the drill press, a pilot hole and my 3/8 pin hole. And so also here I deducted for the glass. So what I did is I just I held that up tight against the side of the trunk with that little shallow rabbit there where that fiberglass is, and I spotted the hole by eye first with the drill bit. Then I put this in place, drilled through with my pilot hole and then my 3/8 hole, and it went in dead square. It came out just exactly centered on the other side, so I was really pleased with that. So this worked really well. It's a lot easier than trying to put the whole trunk assembly in the drill press before before it was assembled. But you could do it either way, it doesn't really matter. It's just the way I did it. And then also here this weekend I'm going to try to get my cleats for the forward locker glued in place. Those are all cut and ready to go. They just are waiting for somebody to glue them in. And so that's about it. I wanted to show you the bunk tops coated and my centerboard side stiffener before it got installed. And so we'll make this this is gonna be part 2, and this is the first half of it. So after we get a bunch of work done, I'll do another little follow-up, or maybe that'll be part 3. So anyway, thanks for following along, and I'll keep you up to date shortly.